My wife said she was visiting her sick aunt. I found her wedding ring in my brother's car. I trusted my wife completely until a random oil change exposed her double life. The betrayal cut deeper because the man she chose was my own younger brother. Instead of exploding, I stayed quiet and let the truth destroy them publicly. I was holding a paper cup of burnt coffee when the mechanic said, "Sir, is this ring yours?" The shop smelled like oil and rubber, that sharp metallic tang that clings to your clothes long after you leave. A radio hummed somewhere behind the counter, low and tinny, and a fluorescent light flickered above us like it couldn't quite decide if it wanted to stay on. I remember all of that because my mind was scrambling for something solid to hold on to, something normal, as his fingers hovered over the counter with a familiar circle of gold resting in his palm. It took me a second to recognize it, too long. My wife's wedding ring had a tiny scratch on the inside of the band from the day we moved into our first apartment. She'd slipped while carrying a box, laughed it off, kissed me, said it was battle damage. I used to trace that scratch with my thumb when we sat on the couch at night, her feet tucked under my leg, the TV murmuring to itself while we pretended not to be tired. That ring was supposed to be on her hand. Instead, it was sitting on a grease-stained counter in a shop across town, pulled from the cup holder of my younger brother's car. I didn't answer the mechanic right away. I just stared. Somewhere in my chest, something tightened. Not sharply, not yet, but like a knot being pulled slowly, patiently. Before that moment, my life had been quiet in the way that feels earned. Not exciting, not perfect, just steady. My wife, Laura, and I had been married for 11 years. We lived in a modest two-story house with beige siding that always looked a little tired, no matter how often I power washed it. Every morning, she woke before me, padded downstairs in her socks, and made coffee too strong for my taste. I'd complain, she'd grin, and say, "Drink it anyway." It was our thing. She worked part-time at a physical therapy clinic. I managed logistics for a regional supply company. Numbers, schedules, predictable problems. Evenings were routine. Dinner at 6, dishes together, sometimes a show we half-watched while scrolling our phones. On weekends, we visited my parents or hers, rotated holidays, argued lightly about whose turn it was to cook. My brother, Ethan, was always around. He was 6 years younger than me, still figuring things out, still drifting between jobs and ideas. He borrowed tools, money, my truck when his car acted up. Laura was patient with him in a way that made me proud at first. She'd remind me to invite him over, ask how his interviews were going, insist we send him home with leftovers. "Everyone needs someone in their corner," she'd say, and I believed her. The first crack appeared so quietly I almost missed it. Laura's aunt, her mom's older sister, had been sick for years. Diabetes, complications, the slow erosion that comes with chronic illness. So when Laura told me one Thursday evening that she needed to drive 3 hours north to stay with her for a few days, I didn't question it. She packed lightly, kissed me longer than usual, and promised to call every night. "She's not doing great," Laura said, adjusting her bag by the door. Her voice had a softness to it, a practiced concern. I need to be there." "Of course," I told her. "Text me when you arrive." She nodded, slipped on her shoes, and paused. For a second, she looked like she wanted to say something else. Then she smiled, that familiar curve of her lips, and left. That night, the house felt too quiet. The refrigerator clicked, on and off. The dog slept on her side of the bed, head resting on her pillow like he was waiting. Laura texted me just after 10. "Made it. Long drive. Love you." I typed back, "Love you too. Drive safe tomorrow." The next morning, I noticed her toothbrush was missing from the cup by the sink. I told myself it meant nothing. She probably packed it. She was always more organized than me. Over the next few weeks, the visits became more frequent. Every other weekend, sometimes midweek. Always the same explanation, delivered with the same tired sigh. Her aunt was struggling. Her mom needed help. Family came first. I nodded. I kissed her goodbye. I waved from the porch. But I started noticing what she didn't say. She stopped wearing her ring on those trips, claiming her finger was swelling. She answered calls in the other room. She'd come home exhausted but restless, showering immediately, tossing her clothes straight into the wash. When I reached for her at night, she'd shift away, apologetic, distracted. "You okay?" I asked once, brushing my thumb over her knuckle. "Just tired," she said quickly. Too quickly. "It's been a lot."
I believed her, or maybe I wanted to, because believing her meant my world stayed intact. It meant my brother was still my brother, my wife was still my wife, and the quiet life I'd built didn't have to crack open and spill everything I thought I knew onto a cold, oil-stained floor. I took my brother's car to the shop the morning everything changed because he asked me to. His voice on the phone was casual. "Can you handle it? I'm slammed today." I said yes without hesitation. That's what you do for family. I just didn't know yet how much that word was about to cost me.
I left the mechanic's shop with the ring in my pocket and a hollow feeling I couldn't name yet. The air outside was sharp with early fall, the kind that smells faintly of leaves even before they've started to turn. I sat in my car for a long moment, hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. My phone buzzed, a text from Laura. "Heading to Aunt Carol's now. I'll call tonight." I watched the words settle on the screen like dust. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I pulled the ring from my pocket. It felt heavier than it should have, warm from my skin. I turned it slowly, found the scratch. There was no denying it now. This wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't a mistake. Still, my mind fought for explanations. Maybe Ethan found it somewhere. Maybe Laura had dropped it during a visit to my parents and he'd picked it up without realizing. Maybe, somehow, there was a version of this that didn't end with everything breaking. I drove home on autopilot, every red light stretching longer than usual. When I walked into the house, the quiet greeted me again, but this time it felt different, accusatory. I set my keys down too hard. The dog lifted his head, confused. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I went looking. Not in a dramatic way. I didn't tear the house apart or scroll through her phone. I just paid attention. I opened the hall closet where we kept old coats and luggage. Her overnight bag was gone, like it should be, but when I checked the laundry room, her favorite sweater, the soft gray one she always packed for long drives, was hanging on the back of the chair. That didn't make sense. I stood there, fingers brushing the sleeve, trying to remember the last time I'd seen her wear it. My chest felt tight again, that slow pull. I checked the cabinet where we kept travel-sized toiletries. Her toothbrush was still missing, but her shampoo bottle sat right where it always did. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the wood grain until it blurred. That evening, I called Ethan. He answered on the third ring, breathless, like he'd been moving. "Hey, what's up?" "Your car's ready," I said. My voice sounded steady, even to me. "Oh, great. Thanks, man. I owe you." "Anytime," I replied. A pause. "What have you been up to lately?" There was a beat, just half a second, but I felt it. "You know, stuff. Trying to line up work." "Why?" "No reason. Just checking in." "Cool," he said quickly. "I'll swing by tomorrow to grab the keys." After we hung up, I sat there holding my phone, replaying his tone in my head. That half second, that breath he'd taken before answering. I'd known my brother my whole life. I knew when he was lying. I just never thought I'd be listening for it. Laura called that night like she promised. The connection crackled faintly, as if she were somewhere rural. "How's the drive?" I asked. "Long," she sighed. I could hear a TV in the background. Laughter. Not old, not weak. It didn't sound like an aunt's living room. "She's resting now. I'm just decompressing." "Give her my love," I said. "I will," she replied. "I miss you." The words landed wrong. They always had weight before. Now they felt rehearsed. "I miss you too," I said, because I wasn't ready to stop pretending. When Ethan came by the next afternoon, I was ready. I handed him the keys, watched his eyes flicker to my pocket, then away. "Thanks again," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "You didn't have to." "It's fine," I said. "Hey, did you find anything weird in your car? The mechanic mentioned some stuff in the cup holder." He froze, just for a moment, but it was enough. "What kind of stuff?" he asked. "Just odds and ends," I said lightly. "Loose change, a ring." His face drained of color. "Oh, that. Yeah, I meant to tell you. I found it a while back. Figured it was yours." I pulled the ring from my pocket and set it on the counter between us. The gold caught the light. The scratch glinted. "It's Laura's," I said. He swallowed. "I know." The silence stretched. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a car passed. "How long?" I asked. He closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. "I didn't plan it," he said. "It just happened." I nodded slowly. "How long?"
6 months. The word echoed in my head. 6 months of lies, of goodbyes, of phone calls from imaginary living rooms. Does she know I know? I asked. He shook his head. Please, don't tell her. Let me talk to her. We were going to— Stop, I said quietly. I picked up the ring, feeling its familiar weight, and slid it back into my pocket. My hands were steady. My voice was calm. Inside, something had shifted. Not rage, not yet. Something colder. Get out, I said. He didn't argue. That night, I lay in bed alone, staring at the ceiling. The dog pressed against my leg. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just listened to the clock tick and thought about every moment I trusted them both without question. And I made a decision. If the truth was going to come out, it wouldn't come out from me yelling in the dark. It would come out in the light.
The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of calm, like the quiet after a storm has already passed, but before you stepped outside to see the damage. Laura texted me before sunrise. Rough night. Aunt Carol's blood sugar dropped. I might stay an extra day. I stared at the message while the coffee maker gurgled and hissed. The smell filled the kitchen, bitter and grounding. I typed back a simple, "Okay, be safe." My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. I spent the day doing ordinary things with deliberate care. I folded laundry. I took the dog for a long walk. I answered emails at work with extra politeness. It felt important to move slowly, to keep my footing. Anger was there, yes, but it was contained, like water behind a dam. By noon, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I wasn't going to confront Laura alone in our kitchen. I wasn't going to beg or scream or demand explanations that would only come wrapped in half-truths. I had learned something about deception. It survives best in private. So I started gathering light. First, I called Laura's mother. "Hi, Mom," I said when she answered. "Quick question, how's Aunt Carol doing?" There was a pause. Papers rustled on her end. "She's fine, I think. Why?" "Oh," I said gently. "Laura said she was with her." Another pause, longer this time. "Laura hasn't been up here in months," her mother said slowly. "She calls sometimes, but—" I thanked her and hung up before she could ask more. The truth settled fully then, not as a shock, as confirmation. Next, I called my parents. We had a standing Sunday dinner planned that weekend. Nothing special, just roast chicken and vegetables, the same meal my mother had been making for decades. Ethan was supposed to come too. "Can we make it a little bigger?" I asked. "Laura should be back by then. Thought it might be nice to have everyone together." My mother was pleased. "Of course," she said. "Family's family." That word again. I didn't tell anyone else. I didn't warn Ethan. I didn't hint to Laura. I just waited. Laura came home Saturday afternoon. She smelled of a different soap, something floral, unfamiliar. She hugged me tightly, longer than usual. "You okay?" she asked, searching my face. "Yeah," I said. "Just missed you." She smiled, relieved. "I missed you too." That night, she slept soundly beside me. I lay awake, listening to her breathe, watching the shadows move across the ceiling as cars passed outside. I thought about the version of her I'd married. I wondered when she'd started slipping away. I wondered if she ever planned to tell me. Sunday arrived gray and cool. Laura wore her blue dress, the one she always wore to my parents' house. As she slipped her hand into mine in the car, I noticed again that her ring was missing. "Did you forget something?" I asked lightly. She glanced down, then laughed. "Oh, yeah, my finger's still swollen. You know how it gets." I nodded and turned the radio up a notch. At my parents' house, the table was already set when we arrived. My mother bustled in the kitchen. My father read the paper. Ethan arrived last, eyes darting when he saw me, then Laura. She smiled at him, a small, careful smile. He looked away. Dinner unfolded politely at first. Weather, work, a neighbor's new dog. Plates clinked, glasses refilled. Halfway through the meal, I cleared my throat. "I wanted to share something," I said. Everyone looked up. "I found Laura's wedding ring in Ethan's car." The room went very still. Laura's fork slipped from her fingers and clattered against the plate. Ethan's face flushed deep red. "What?" asked my mother, confused.
Laura turned to me, eyes wide. "What are you talking about?" I reached into my pocket and placed the ring on the table. The gold shone under the overhead light, that tiny scratch faced up. "I called your mom," I said calmly. "Aunt Carol's been fine. She hasn't seen you." Silence pressed in from all sides. Laura's mouth opened, then closed. Her shoulders sagged. "I can explain," she whispered. Ethan stood up abruptly. "This isn't the place." "It's exactly the place," my father said sharply, folding his paper. Laura's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, voice trembling. I looked at her, really looked at her. Not with anger, with clarity. "You let me worry about a sick aunt," I said quietly. "You let me wave you goodbye." My mother covered her mouth. My father stared at Ethan with a mix of disbelief and disappointment that cut deeper than shouting ever could. "I'm done," I said, standing. "I won't yell, I won't beg, but I won't protect lies." I turned and walked out, the sound of voices rising behind me, questions spilling into the space I'd left. In the car, my hands finally shook, not from rage, from release, because the truth, once spoken aloud, had done what it always does. It changed everything.
I sat in my car for a long time before turning the key. The windows fogged slightly from my breath, each exhale slow and deliberate, like I was reminding my body how to function. Inside the house, voices rose and fell, muffled through walls and distance, but I didn't strain to hear them. Whatever was being said no longer belonged to me. When I finally drove away, the road felt unfamiliar, even though I'd taken it 1,000 times. Streetlights flickered on one by one, casting pale circles on the pavement. I pulled into a small park a few blocks from home and shut the engine off. The silence there was deeper, broken only by wind in the trees and the faint hum of traffic far away. That's where the shaking stopped. Not because the pain disappeared, but because I had nowhere left to hide. I didn't cry that night. I leaned my head back against the seat and stared up through the windshield at a slice of darkening sky. I thought about how betrayal doesn't always feel like an explosion. Sometimes it feels like erosion, like discovering that something solid has been hollow for a long time. My phone buzzed. "Laura, please come home. We need to talk." I waited a full minute before replying. "Not tonight." Another buzz, this time from Ethan. "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you." I turned the phone face down. When I did go home, the house felt altered, not hostile, just emptied of something I hadn't realized was already gone. Laura sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched. Her eyes were red, swollen. "I never wanted to humiliate you," she said softly as I walked in. "You blindsided me." I set my keys down. "You lied to me for 6 months," I replied. My voice was even. "You don't get to decide how the truth arrives." She flinched. "I was going to tell you. Eventually," I said. "After what? Another trip? Another excuse?" She looked down at her hands. "I felt invisible," she whispered. "You were always working, always tired." I nodded. "And you chose my brother." She didn't answer. We talked for hours, or maybe it just felt that way. There were apologies, explanations, tears that might have been real, might have been fear. I listened. I didn't interrupt. When she finally reached for my hand, I pulled away gently. "I'm filing for a divorce," I said. The word hung between us, heavy but clean. She cried harder then, not dramatically, quietly, like someone realizing the ground won't come back. Ethan tried to call me the next day. Then the day after that, I didn't pick up. My parents did. My father came by one evening with a container of soup my mother had made. He set it on the counter and sighed. "I raised you both better than this," he said, more to himself than to me. "I know," I replied. Ethan moved out of town 2 weeks later. No announcement, just gone. My parents told me later he'd taken a job 3 states away. My mother cried when she said his name. I didn't ask questions. The fallout spread quietly. Friends noticed Laura wasn't around. Invitations changed. Conversations paused when I entered rooms. I never explained unless asked, and even then I kept it simple. If she was unfaithful with my brother, people didn't know how to respond to that. They still don't. Laura packed her things while I was at work.
When I came home, the closets were half empty. The house echoed differently. On the kitchen counter, she'd left the ring. I didn't touch it. The divorce was civil, painful, but clean. No screaming lawyers, no public accusations, just signatures, timelines, a quiet understanding that whatever we'd been was over. What surprised me most wasn't the loss, it was the relief. I slept better, I ate more, I stopped bracing myself for lies I could feel but couldn't name. Some nights were hard. Grief has a way of sneaking up when you least expect it. But even then, the pain felt honest. One afternoon, months later, I ran into Laura at the grocery store. She looked thinner, tired. She smiled sadly. "I hope you're doing okay," she said. "I am," and I meant it. As I walked away, I realized something important. I hadn't exposed them to punish them. I'd exposed the truth to free myself. And sometimes that's the quietest kind of justice.
Healing didn't arrive all at once. It came in small, almost unnoticeable moments, like realizing one morning that the ache in my chest wasn't the first thing I felt when I woke up, or noticing that the house, once so loud with memories, had started to feel like mine again. I repainted the bedroom walls a soft, warm gray. I donated clothes that no longer felt connected to the person I was becoming. I replaced the coffee maker. The old one had finally sputtered out, with a quieter model that didn't hiss so angrily in the mornings. These weren't acts of revenge or erasure. They were acts of permission to move forward. Some evenings I still caught myself replaying old conversations, searching for the moment everything tipped. I wondered if I'd missed a sign, a plea, a chance to fix something before it broke. But those thoughts grew less sharp over time. Reflection turned into understanding, and understanding softened into acceptance. Ethan didn't reach out again. I heard through my parents that he'd settled into his new job, that he was trying to get his life together. My relationship with my parents changed too. Strained at first, then slowly mending. We learned how to talk without stepping on landmines, how to acknowledge loss without assigning blame. One Sunday afternoon, my father quietly said, "You handled it with more grace than I could have." I didn't know how to respond to that. Grace hadn't been my goal. Survival had. Laura and I finalized everything on a rainy Tuesday. The courthouse smelled faintly of old paper and disinfectant. When we signed the last document, she paused, pen hovering. "I never thanked you," she said softly, "for not destroying me." I looked at her, really looked, at the woman I'd loved, the stranger she'd become, and the version of myself standing there now. "I didn't do it for you," I said. "I did it so I could live with myself." She nodded, tears gathering but not falling, and then we walked out separate doors. Life didn't suddenly become brighter or easier, but it became clearer. I started saying yes to things I'd always postponed. Weekend trips, dinners with friends, hobbies that had collected dust. I learned that peace isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It settles in quietly when you stop fighting the truth. One evening, months later, I sat on my back porch as the sun dipped below the trees. The dog lay at my feet, breathing slow and steady. Fireflies blinked in the yard like tiny, deliberate signals. I realized I was smiling for no particular reason. That's when it hit me. Betrayal had taken a lot from me, but it hadn't taken my dignity, or my capacity to trust again, or my belief that honesty, even when it hurts, is kinder than any comfortable lie. I still have the ring. It sits in a small wooden box in my desk drawer, not as a wound, as a reminder of who I was, of what I endured, of what I chose not to become. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how I handled it, if I wish I'd confronted them privately, spared the family the pain. I always answer the same way. The truth doesn't need protection, it needs space. And when you give it that space, it has a way of setting things right, without shouting, without cruelty, without losing yourself in the process. If you were in my place, would you have stayed quiet as long as I did, or would you have chosen a different path? Let me know in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, consider subscribing or supporting the channel, because you never know whose quiet truth might need to be heard next.